and welcome to Blue Stream, bringing Willamette to you. My name is Tiffany Newton, and I am the Director of Graduate Alumni Engagement here at Willamette. Today's conversation features Professors Ashley Nixon and Romana Autrey from the Atkinson Graduate School of Management. Ashley Nixon is an Associate Professor of Human Resource Management and Organizational Behavior and teaches courses in human resources and organizational dynamics, HR principles and practices, training and development, and compensation and rewards. This past year, she has been instrumental in expanding our undergraduate business offerings while also actively shepherding the PACE and LEAD courses for our ECC MBA program here in Salem. Romana Autrey is an associate professor of accounting whose research focuses on managing collaboration within organizations and inter-organizational interactions. She teaches courses in accounting from our foundational one on up to accounting for managers and accounting and incentives for organizations. Both professors have been key in developing and expanding the curricular offerings and experiential learning opportunities for our undergraduate and MBA students, and we'll be discussing the recent program expansions as well as delving into what a leading management education looks like today. Professors, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, we're so delighted. So if I may start off, I know that undergraduate business here at Willamette is quickly becoming one of our fastest growing majors. We saw the minor released and then the classes filled up and you were adding more and more sections. I was wondering if you could share a bit about how the undergraduate business offerings at Willamette have expanded for the past couple of years.
I'll take point on that. So we started off with the minor, as you said. We've got 5 courses that are part of that sequence. There's an introduction to management. There's an organizations course, an accounting course, then a finance course, and then the capstone for that sequence is a marketing course. And those courses have been rolling out for the last few years. We started off basically in the order that I said them. One the first year and then a few the next year. And then now we actually are offering all of those. There will be one more one more lower division course that gets rolled out. And that will be an analytical modeling. Let's see, what's the actual name of it? Analytics and Modeling for Management Science. And that one will be coming next fall or next year. I guess we don't know exactly which semester it will be in. And so that is how the offerings have been rolled in to fill out the minor.
So if you could, what does the program look like right now? What might be the progression or the courses that someone would take, and how does that tie into a liberal arts education?
Okay. I'll talk about the sequence, and then Ashley, would you like to do the tie-in? Maybe divisional labor here. So the courses that they would take right now will have the lower division courses will be the same minor courses that we have, and then they will be added upon. We'll have the stakeholder cooperation course, the strategic communication course, another accounting course. We'll have operations management. There'll be data-driven decision-making. That'll be a data analysis course, leadership and career development, and then there'll be a new capstone of a global strategic management course. As part of that, students will also be taking an internship and an experiential elective. And that is a well-rounded, pretty comprehensive education. And I'll let Ashley take it next.
Yes, so as part of this, Romana and I got to spend our last summer having the joy of doing research. And so we got to kind of go and look at what other places around the world are doing when they try to link management and liberal arts, and then think about what that means for us here at Willamette. And I'll personalize this story a little bit. One of the first things that drew me to the school when I was on the market was the cross-sectoral approach. The fact that we teach management to public, not-for-profit, and corporate management all at once, right? We say, like, good management is good management. And you might need to know a different set of verbiage for one setting, but the core principles are the same. And so I think that the reason I'm telling this story is I think that links nicely to this idea of liberal arts, right? It's getting to that idea of if you have this core base of knowledge, you are well equipped to take on the things that you want to do in your life. So teaming this applied focused management class, as our colleague and old dean Deborah Ringgold calls it, trade school, to this rigorous background, knowing about humanities, right? Getting that broad scope of the world, and then tailoring it for how do I go out and take this into the workplace, take this into my career, bring this strong communication and critical thinking background. So when we built this out, we wanted to make sure that shone through. And so you see it in some of our course titles. We're still Introduction to Management in Business, Government, and Not-for-Profit. And we've got several that have that. We keep trying to come up with an attractive abbreviation for it, but I'm not sure we've gotten there yet, because it certainly is a mouthful. But we want to integrate it into a lot of our classes. But we do have a couple that we have specifically pulled out. And one of the ones that we were really excited about designing, and is something that is really unique to the Willamette undergraduate program, is the stakeholder cooperation and non-market strategy. And so this is really trying to make sure that every student who comes through our doors leaves truly believing and understanding not unto ourselves alone are we born, right? It is not just about the stockholder. It is about the stakeholder, and thinking about it robustly, thinking about what should be thought of in that strategic, competitive market way, and what should be thought about in the non-market strategy component. And so that was one that we were really excited about getting some of our colleagues to flesh out with us. And then the rest of the program, we wanted to make sure that our students were as able to communicate effectively in the language of business as they are in the language of liberal arts. So we see a lot of our program is going to be a little bit more heavy on data analysis, on accounting, on these skill sets that are going to be what gets them in their first opportunity, but allows them to build upon and keep up with the pace and the rapid changing of work.
Thank you so much. So in thinking of all of that and just how quickly this program has grown, and I know I work with our admissions colleagues, and it is the top thing that prospective and new students are interested in, because I think it really marries what is amazing about Willamette's liberal arts education with also some real world skills to help folks get into, like you said, that first opportunity in an ever changing and often difficult labor market. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about what's on the horizon for this program and where things might go in the future.
Well, I'll take a first stab at that. What we have currently, that students who had been interested in having a business education as part, or management, I guess more accurately, education as part of their Willamette experience, is the 3-2 program. And so students would do the first 3 years of their coursework in the undergraduate College of Arts and Sciences, and then their senior year and an added year, that would be the 2 years of the MBA program. And so when we roll in this really rich and comprehensive business major, we're not necessarily going to need to have this 3-2 let me try that one more time. We're still going to need the 3-2 for students that don't necessarily want to do the business major and would like to do that program, but it's going to offer more opportunities. So the opportunity we're going to have now is we've had these students for an extra 2 years than what we would have had when they're finishing the first year of their MBA program, which is their senior year. And so there's already an accelerated MBA program on our books, but it isn't really used very much yet. So we specifically designed a business major to kind of kick that back in, and we'll have this accelerated 4+1 where students would go through the major, finish that in their 4 years, and then in the 5th year, they'd get to these wonderful signature experiential courses that we have with the Angel Fund and the O'Neill Investment Fund and a number of electives that would be available. All of the MBA palette would be available for them. And so that business major is designed specifically so that they will be qualified and ready to hit the ground running for that +1 year. Ashley, did you have anything to add?
I think that covers it.
That's there's so many different things within that answer to unpack. I know, like you said, experiential learning is one of the things that Atkinson and Willamette do so well, and we have some truly unique offerings from the Philanthropy for Community Impact course for grants, the O'Neill Investment Fund, the Angel Fund. I know I've worked with alums from all of those programs, and they like to talk about their projects, and some of those are ongoing, and it's really exciting to see how their academic pursuits actually have a real world impact and a legacy is being built out of those. And I'm wondering if you could speak on that experiential learning component and how we use that to prepare students for real world business environments and challenges so that they are job ready upon graduation or even before then. And could you share a bit about exactly some of those programs that you mentioned?
Absolutely. So I'll talk about the one that I'm in now, which is PACE. And so that's our first year-long program. I know some of you who are alumni may have completed that. And it has evolved over time, but this year we've got students, all first-year students are working on 11 teams serving different nonprofits. And so the nonprofits came to us with a problem, and me and my co-instructors have been working since October. They're getting ready for their big formal presentations in mid-April. So we're at this point wrapping up, but it's been this great opportunity for them to get out into the not-for-profit sector to understand. We did industry analysis and pestle analyses on these organizations so they can go and look at the environment that they're in, the stresses that they have, the challenges that they're facing. They've done an expansive secondary data analysis and gone out and just found everything that they could, and exploratory research by interviewing people who work for the not-for-profits, people who are served by the not-for-profits, trying to understand everything from the leaders' understanding of the mission down to the end user's experience. And then we had them develop surveys that they had to field so they could have data and do some data analysis. And right now we're working with them on finalizing their managerial recommendations so that they have this nice consulting report to push out. And so this is one example of, I would say, our cornerstone in experiential learning. And a unique thing about Atkinson is that they really hit experiential learning before it became a buzzword in MBA programs. And now everyone wants to claim things are experiential. And one of the things Romana and I were seeing is like, it's experiential. We use case analysis. And we're like, well, I mean, it's better than just reading something, I guess. So here, we really take that fundamentally to be a critical aspect. I think there's a great saying, and I don't remember who it was from, but if you learn it, you forget. If you do it, you remember. If you teach it, you truly know. And so we're constantly pushing people to try to get to those levels that they will take these learning outcomes and never forget them. With that, we actually decided when we built out our undergrad program, as much as we were true to our cross-sectoral approach, we wanted to make sure that experiential was an integrated part of this program. And so we have that built in a few ways. One, we've got some classes I'm excited about because I'll probably be involved in them. One called Strategic Communication and Career Development, and the other is Leadership and Career Development. And one of the aspects of PACE is that I work with our career management team to make sure our students are ready for internships. And so Jonathan Scrimenti comes in, our students write resumes, cover letters, they get feedback, they do mock interviews for some of our alumni. I know you've been invited to do some of these mock interviews for us. So he really makes sure that they're prepared to enter that market. And it's one of the reasons our students are so successful at achieving internships and then quick job offers upon graduation. And we want to make sure we bring that down into the undergraduate level. We also have an internship requirement so that all of our undergraduates will leave with some professional experience. And we have an experiential elective requirement as well. And so students will have the opportunity to choose between doing a project management class, which will be kind of something like we would do with PACE, but perhaps a little bit more scaffolding built in to help our younger students with less experience make sure that they can deliver. Our MBAs, a lot of times, we're like, here's an organizational problem. Come up with a solution. Good luck. With our undergrad, we're like, we should maybe add a little bit more scaffolding and structure in there to make sure they're finding this a successful learning experience. And then on the other side, for those who are more entrepreneurial, we're going to have a new ventures or international venture class. And so that will give them an opportunity to actually start an organization, whether they want to do a for-profit or not-for-profit organization, and work with some of our awesome entrepreneurial faculty to actually get it off the ground.
Oh, that's so exciting, especially as, I'm thinking back to other events we've held at Chicha or other businesses that have come out of these exact classes that you're talking about, and, Rudy's and other places. And we're so thankful that those alums are still connected with us and willing to share, how their student experience went. I'm wondering if you could, you really described well some of the options for undergraduate students, what some of those courses are like. If you could talk about how experiential learning has changed over the years at Atkinson and how that approach really does set people up for success. You touched on it a little bit, but I know that there's some additional facets there as well.
One of the things that's been critical for early student success, and I think is also an important reason why we needed to integrate it into our undergrad curriculum, is they need something to talk about at interviews. And so PACE is this wonderful field for them to experience everything. What do you do when your colleague isn't pulling their weight? How did you handle a conflict or a disagreement about the goal of a task? How did you give someone performance feedback? So there's so much, when did you show leadership that they get to then bring into their interviews to talk about? And it really helps them develop, even our, 3-2s who really don't have a ton of professional experience, really end up with these robust, articulate stories that they can make about the experiences that they've had. That said, Romana mentioned our signature electives or experiential classes. And those I don't have the luxury of teaching because while I still would love to create one, I do not think I can find an organization that's like, would you like my students to fire your students or, I don't know, change your compensation system?
Maybe not.
That's a hard ask. But for the areas where we've been able to build it out with philanthropic grants, investments, angel investing, it's such an amazing opportunity for students to get to go out, research organizations and decide where they want to invest, and then actually see the consequence of those investments. And in fact, our angel class has done such an awesome job with their investments. It's financially self-sustaining now. And it's looking at its future, and they're like, we've got enough money to not have to worry about it for years. So it's this really exciting place that our students get to do things that 23, 24, 25-year-olds don't get to do in the workplace, but they do here.
Yeah. And to add my own experiences, I've worked really closely with Professor Thibodeau and some of the folks over at the grants course, and the fact that they're working with a large nonprofit, Willamette Valley United Way of the Mid-Willamette Valley. I will get it right. And the fact that they're working with, $150,000 each year, investing that in different community organizations. They have specific deliverables, key indicators of progress. They're measuring these outcomes. And it really ties back into everything that you're talking about. It's like, not only are you need to learn what it's about, but then you need to do it. And then you need to measure your success and report on that and close the loop and hopefully take that somewhere and keep trying and perfecting that. And I think that cycle is so amazing to be able to do that while in graduate school and then take that into a professional environment.
And as one of my former colleagues used to say, there's something about writing a check for $50,000 that makes you really careful and you really learn. Now you really get it.
Yeah, I think the other term we use is consequential learning. Like you are making real world decisions that impact people and organizations, and there's a real world outcome that you are accountable to when all is said and done.
Absolutely.
Now, I know we've talked a bit about experiential offerings. I'm wondering if you could talk about, I know HR may not be the right one in the future, but if there are any other ones that you think might be coming up or areas that you think you might develop some experiential offerings, even if it's not a full course, kind of where that field is headed.
I would say that we're always tossing around ideas and doing our best to incorporate little pieces. So we sort of have like more basic experiential electives, and then the full-blown, more like the signature or the consequential electives. And so I'm always kind of keeping an eye out for little projects that I could turn into bigger projects that I can work in. And so I've had a few discussions. I have an accounting and incentives and organizations course, and trying to find specific organizations where, and it's not just incentives that are, incentive contracts, but also things like, how do you design your control system? How do you use enabling controls rather than coercive controls, and combine that with empowerment and holding people accountable, right? And so designing a balanced scorecard for a real organization. And so I've got some nibbles and I'm keeping an eye out for it. But I think many of us are kind of in that boat where we're rolling things in as we can because it's more fun and we get more out of it. So, yeah.
I have no plans to do this because I definitely don't have the funding or know anyone who does at the moment. But spitballing a few years ago, we threw out the idea of a student private equity firm where we would buy small, not very successful organizations, and then have our students take on all of the roles within those organizations and see if we could turn them around. And so I love that idea, and I keep wanting to talk about it in case someone someday is like, that's a great idea. I know someone who might want to give you money for that. Because I think it would be, this really interesting, cool way where we could actually have students, no matter what their interest, getting this consequential experience, getting, their hands dirty, so to speak, with some real life consequences to it. So that will remain my pie in the sky goal for the long run.
I love it. Forgive me, it almost sounds like, a simulator or something where, everything's going wrong and you're put in the middle of it. And it's like, just try whatever you can figure out or what you think might work. And that can build confidence. And I know there would be, expertise and support brought to that, but what an exciting experiment that could be. I also want to kind of broaden our discussion a little bit because we're talking about everything that's happening for undergraduate students, for MBA students on campus. But I know a lot of this takes place within the context of a global pandemic, of multiple, natural disasters. We've seen incidents of mass violence, along with, a reckoning around racial justice. And all of this impacts the labor market. It impacts the decisions that businesses and organizations are making. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to how the educational approach here at Willamette is responding to that and trying to help prepare students for those realities. And even just, moving everything to remote instruction in a week. I mean, things have happened so quickly over this past year that feels like a decade. I just would appreciate you diving into that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll sort of take first pass at it. I mean, certainly we have had to lead by example how one pivots when all of a sudden everything changes. And we are developing those skill sets, and the students are developing those skill sets too. Right? I mean, we are all having to figure out how do we grapple with this. And I think when you come through that, you end up with the confidence that life can throw pretty much anything at you and you're going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, in my classes, I've been doing a couple of things. As I see a couple of my students are here, Beth and John definitely have gotten their earful of this year. But I've been trying to incorporate resiliency into a lot of my classes where possible. Because it's something that we are starting to talk of more, right? Now that we're a year into a pandemic, people are feeling free to talk about mental health in a way that, frankly, they haven't in the past, and talk about resiliency. And so this is an area that is near and dear to my heart, close to my research on work stress. And so I like breaking it down, right? Like we tend to think about a lot of this stuff as traits, and it's really not. It's a summation of our habits. And so we can start identifying which of our habits are enabling resiliency versus holding our resiliency back. And so in a lot of my classes and even my orientation talks, I try to bring up these skill sets that are going to help us be more successful and open the door for folks to reach out. So I'm probably holding about 4 coaching sessions a week now, meeting with individual students who just want a little bit more help developing their resiliency skills in a really stressful time. And probably have twice that many who should be meeting with me if they want to. And the other component that I've been trying to think about is how is this going to change work for a long time? And I feel very intelligent. If you go back, there's an interview that I did for Willamette like 2 weeks into the pandemic. And they're like, how do you think this is going to change work? And I was like, I think telework is here to stay. And here's why. And so now everything's being written about how telework is here to stay. At least maybe not in its full 100% teleremote form, but in some version. And so one of the things that I've been doing, I've taught in-person presentation skills for years. And this year, I taught virtual presentation skills, right? How do we make sure that we're coming across as professionally as we can, no matter what kind of situation is thrown at us? And in fact, John Hicks, who's here as a participant, has done some of the best work I've seen in this area. He's got some nice design skills. And has really kind of taken my expectations to a new level, which I'm going to definitely share with the rest of his colleagues. But And so thinking about those types of skill sets, those self-management skill sets, those presentation skill sets, interview skill sets, what are the things that folks are going to need as everything we do becomes a bit more virtual in the future? So it's that high-level self-management and the really basic tools and skills that we need to advance and put our best foot forward.
That's great. And I know before we started the formal presentation, we were talking about our own backgrounds and some of our challenges and successes with Zoom and other virtual programming and presentation settings. And I'm wondering, that is a great way to reframe this past year and the opportunities that are present within that. I'm wondering if you could also share if there are any other things about how this past year has really changed how you educate folks and what some of those takeaways are, both for self-management and virtual programming, but if there are other ways you are now thinking about how you teach management education in a historic and unprecedented year no one was planning for.
I think it really amped up some of the things that we were already doing. Adult attention spans typically range from about 7 to 12 minutes when they're interested. So already in face-to-face classes, it was trying to, how do I design our time together so that people are active and engaged with the material so that, it's really getting ingrained well in their brain and they don't forget it 20 minutes later. Online, it's become even more of that, right? Mm-hmm. I not only have 7 to 12 minutes, but I have to compete with Instagram. As much as I would love to pretend that that's not an issue, I am aware. So I think that, some of the things that we were already thinking about, it's trying to find virtual tools, virtual ways of encouraging engagement and conversation in an environment that's a little bit more challenging to get some of that participation for folks because everyone really is by themselves. So that for me has been the big change this past year, is trying to figure out what is working in this new environment. What do I need to tweak? And trying to kind of up the ante on some of those practices that I was already engaging in.
Yeah, I would say I've had a similar experimentation, I hadn't thought about it, but it's absolutely true that I have been incorporating a lot of these techniques in already well in advance of this, and I'm just doing more and more of it. Because I teach accounting and it just can get overwhelming, right? And so I've always tried to have, now we're going to learn a little bit, now we're going to try it, now we're going to learn a bit, now we're going to, just to kind of keep things moving and to help it be, like Ashley said, that we don't just kind of cram a bunch in and then 20 minutes later, it all falls out. and to keep things fun and interesting and engaging. But I do think it is just a little bit slower, just a little bit harder to learn when we're not directly in person. And the technical topics, I don't know if it's exacerbated or if it's just me, but I have a suspicion. I do think that this, how do we get people engaged and breaking things up into smaller pieces? I think that is really helpful. And that does seem to be enjoyable for people as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're hitting on both the attention spans, but then the fact that, people, even if you feel like you're in a bubble, you're not in a bubble. You're thinking about maybe how COVID has impacted your family. If someone in, your home has experienced job loss, if there are health issues, we had students displaced for wildfires. There was an ice storm. Power was out for some folks for almost 2 weeks. students. And in all that, you're then going, okay, now we have a spreadsheet, and let's talk about, this aspect of someone's education. And I think we've seen our students really step up to the plate and be inventive and just show some grit and persistence in staying on top of things through all of this. But I appreciate that you're both trying new things and trying to figure out what works while students are also in that. And I think that's part of what's wonderful about Atkinson. It is a smaller school. You do know your students really well. You often teach them several times, and that can kind of help on the relationship side manage what seems unmanageable in a real world context. And so I'm wondering, and we're starting to get questions from those who have joined us, which is wonderful because we're about to switch over to that piece. What else you've done to kind of set students up for success in this space and address mental health needs, address some of those other factors that aren't purely academic, and also prepare students who are now looking at maybe a different job market than what they expected when they started the program, and they're graduating in 2 months, 6 weeks or something like that.
So one thing I did, and this is kind of just, I think my data science colleagues would just call it brute forcing. I made all my students have appointments with me. So I let them either sign up as individuals or small groups, but they had to come by my Zoom office hours and they had to have a meeting with me, because all of those organic opportunities you have to form relationships don't exist. Right? There's no chatting with me before or after class. There's no seeing me in the hall, grabbing a coffee, or coming by my office hours. So I really, just kind of made it something they had to do. Like, you have to come and you have to spend time with me and you have to get to know me. And I was kind of like, I am wondering if these students are going to be like, why are you making me do this? And I did have a couple who was like, why am I here? What am I supposed to talk to you about? But by and large, I have students who are like, thank you so much for taking the time. I know this must be such a drain for you. And I'm like, absolutely not. This is exactly why I want to teach. And so that's how some of these like more regular coaching one-on-ones I've had have come into being. And so that's been a great opportunity for people to at least feel like they have some connection to me and can come and talk about something when they're worried about it, when they want additional time. I also tend to be a bit of a democratic leader teacher. And so it's something that I'm constantly going back and opening the discussion with for students. I cannot imagine going through the year that our students have gone through having the available emotional resiliency resources that I had at their age. Like, I still remember the first time I was, like, oh, I'm dealing with anxiety, or I think I might be a little depressed. And I was older and the stakes were sillier. So I try to be really open and frank in class, talk about how stressful this time is, talk about the fact that this is not normal. And if they don't feel normal, that's okay. Try to normalize what they're feeling, so that we can open the door and make sure they're getting the support that they need. And then on top of that, being the person that they can reach out to if in fact they do need more support. Which has led to like some democratic negotiating of our syllabus. Like, can you get rid of the busy work? And I'm like, there is no busy work. But trying to be flexible where we can to make sure that we're doing our best to support them at a year, hopefully and truly like none I've ever had, and hopefully like none I'll have in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've not been as diligent as Ashley, but I have, tried very hard to be as approachable, and especially online, that's been challenging. But also, flexibility with deadlines and just doing the best I can to support people in the moment, right? And that goes a long way.
It does. And I appreciate you both kind of sharing those experiences. I know it's been difficult for many, but we keep moving along. And like Ashley said, hopefully we don't revisit a year like this anytime soon. One of the questions we got from folks is, how are you dealing with the space needs for some of these new programs for the undergraduate students? I mean, we've all probably remember the Mud Building. It's so big, so where might you be putting people in addressing some of those needs?
That is a great question. I know at the moment there is, a number of the faculty, and probably it's a small number, but are teaching entirely remotely. So there is a little bit more capacity at the moment than there has been in the past. And I don't know how long, once COVID and we have vaccination rates up, if that's less of a concern. I don't know how long we'll have that good fortune. But the building is not at full capacity before, but it's probably going to be past what we could handle by the time we get it all rolled in. There have been some discussions of using some of the other spaces around campus, but it is a great question, and I'm sure that our powers that be are thinking about where on earth they're going to put us. Because certainly, if it's as popular as the minor classes, so the minor classes are not all in Mud. Some of them have been meeting over in Kaneko, which is a bigger space, while the Tokyo International University is not currently here on campus. So in some of those spaces, there's probably more there. But we're creative. We'll come up with something.
Well, and I know the MBA courses sometimes use Ford Hall, or, we just converted the Cone Chapel. Not that I'm allowed to go on campus and see it, but I've seen photos of turning that into a multi-use space with movable chairs and tables and projectors. So there's no more pews. So I know that the facilities management, who's done amazing things addressing the pandemic, they're also trying to see about how we can have flexible spaces that can be used for multiple needs. And we'll try to share more information on that as we go along. So I just want to remind folks, you are welcome to submit your questions. We have about 15 or so minutes. We have a few minutes of wrap up, but we're happy and willing to answer any questions. And in the meantime, I wanted to give Professors Nixon and Autrey an opportunity to share if there's anything we kind of went over too quickly on this, or specific examples of things that you kind of want to share with the group while we have everyone's attention.
That's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, Pat, what a great question about space. My brain is just spiraling. I'm like, we're going to need offices.
And printers and everything else.
So it's going to be good to have a few years to roll this out. We have talked about it a little bit. It's just kind of one of those things that everything has just been COVID focused, right? And we're in the process of signing a new lease on space in Portland. So I think we probably, this is a good prod to remind us to get back to thinking about how this is going to work. Not probably needed next year, but within 2 or 3 years, we should definitely be working on this.
Well, and I know I'll speak for myself. I'm really excited to see Winter Street not be 1,000 miles wide. I think working on the undergraduate business opportunities and really having a intercollegiate collaboration. We're seeing classes, we have an MBA JD. We're looking at how we're going to integrate the Pacific Northwest College of Arts. We're looking at all of these exciting things, and that gets us another beautiful building up in Portland. And so we're thinking of all the different ways we can kind of use our talents and spaces on campus and within our community to kind of bring exciting things into the real world. So that should be exciting in the future. One of the alums online with us said that he was upset that they hadn't gotten rid of Winter Street. Just so that you know, there are several of us staff that are petitioning for it to be a pedestrian plaza and to maybe give up a different street or access somewhere. We've tried to get them to allow us to have food trucks there for alumni events. We're working on it. We're trying to claim that space, and we'll keep people posted as we look at that. But I also just want to go back into if there's anything else before we kind of wrap up for the evening, if there's anything else either of you want to share with this group or for those who may be watching us later on our YouTube channel.
What do we think? Have we missed anything from the undergrad program?
That's what I was thinking. I just not quite getting my mind. I guess those 14-hour days are catching up to me too. But I feel like we have such a high quality program, and we actually benefited quite a bit from, as you say, this sort of talking with people across the street. And I also serve on the Provost Academic Council, and just some of the people who I've made connections with through that have been really helpful in making this program. I think it's going to end up just really fantastic. It's been a great collaboration. Oh, go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say, we had a really great time and opportunity to work with a lot of folks last summer, envisioning, it was one of those funny things. For years, I felt like the attitude was liberal arts versus business. And it was fun to get to step into the space of, but if you want to take your liberal arts degree into the real world, into a business environment, what does that look like? What is the most liberal arts version of this that we can think about while, still equipping people for a lifetime, like a full career? And that was one of the things that I love plugging about our program, because I think it's so cool. And an alumni event is literally the ideal place for me to do so, which is our MBA for Life.
That's what I was trying to remember. Go for it.
So I love the idea. We always talk about building our classes around both the timeless and the timely. Right? What do you need to know that you're going to use and draw on for a really long time versus what are the things that are common in the marketplace right now? And the timeless, you should be good. You can always come back and get a refresher. We're happy to have you. But for the timely, it's this really great opportunity. And I can't remember exactly what the costs are associated with it. It's something almost nominal. And students get to come back, or I should say alumni get to come back and take whatever class they want with whomever they want. And I think a nice thing about coming through COVID is previously we had students who would do this, but they had to be local. And they had to be able to come on campus for our classes. And now that we've adopted Zoom, I'm hoping that not necessarily, I definitely don't want to keep teaching solely online or hybrid, but I love the idea. Like right now, I've got a former alumni. She took a class with me in 2012. And now she's taking another class with me from Toronto. So she stays up till 1 a.m. every Tuesday night to take our class. And so I'm hoping that this is something that can keep going in the future, where we start getting to see some of those faces come back, get a refresher. I think one of the things that we really kept at the front of our mind when we built this program is what we really want is to engender intellectual curiosity and a desire for lifelong learning, and set people up for success on that path. And so I just like bringing that up because I don't feel like it's talked about enough. But MBA for life, I think it's so cool. As far as I know, we're the only ones who do it.
And I also think that ties in really well to the larger Big W mission of making sure we stay an intellectual hub for our current students, but also for our alums throughout all of the different stages of life. And so on WooStream, you'll see a lot of that programming. We've had everything from, talking about admissions and preparing your own students for their college experience, to learning how to make buzz bars, to talking about, how COVID is impacting legal decisions. And so we try to create an environment where people can engage with us, can learn with us, and then also will share their own time and talents with our students through, programs like PACE, like offering internships, all those different ways that we kind of stay connected. Another shameless plug right there, but it's all very exciting stuff. So with that, we only have a couple minutes. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with folks?
I saw one question pop up.
Oh, yes.
Are the experiential and consequential classes available? Yeah, that is something that we could have mentioned earlier, I guess. We are trying to do more cross-listing between our MBA for professional class in the evening and our full-time program. We've had occasional students cross programs in the past, but we really want to open up for our students to be able to take a wider range of electives. So that is something else that is kind of in the works, is figuring out how to facilitate this in a way that augments everyone's education outcomes.
Yeah, and my understanding is there are a small number of MBA students that are being able to take some of the consequential classes. I think Angel has one, for example.
Yeah, I believe.
Yes.
Professors Autrey and Nixon, thank you so very much for sharing your experiences and examples around all of the exciting educational offerings that are being brought to Willamette at the undergraduate level and for our MBA students. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and we hope to catch up with you soon. For those of you online with us, we hope you'll continue to turn into WooStream, our virtual programming platform. And until we see you online again, we hope everyone stays safe and healthy and, gets vaccinated. And we will look to seeing you hopefully in the near future in person if we can, and if not online, but maybe in more exciting ways. We'll try to up our game there. But thank you everyone so much. We hope you have a wonderful evening. And with that, we will wish you well and see you next time. Take care, everybody.